Hey everybody, Ray Lozano here. I just want to thank you for tuning in to our podcast. I have a super good friend with me today. We have been friends for, quite a while. And he has gone down pretty much the same road I have gone down, where we both travel nationally and even internationally sometimes, talking with kids about drugs and alcohol, about bullying, about making good decisions, all kinds of stuff. And then we also work with different groups, nonprofit organizations, and parent groups. So today we're here to answer some of the questions that you have when it comes to working with your kids. And gosh, it's just, how many kids do you have now, Javier?
I have two, and I like to consider them kids. They're 24 and 21 now, but they're still my babies,
Right.
and I treat them as such. And
Yeah.
for better or for worse, it gets on their nerves. I'm actually a grandfather, so
Yeah.
I have a son and I have a son's son, and that's what I call him. And when Malachi was born a year ago, I made my son take a picture with me. I'll show you a picture. I got it right here. I made my son take this picture with me.
Look at that.
Yeah,
and just a little bit. Yeah.
This was my Christmas present because he was completely against this picture. He refused to take this picture. And I was like, I promise you, we're going to be glad we did this. I was like, you don't have to get me anything for Christmas. I want this picture. So he'll always be my baby, even though he has his own baby now.
Who knew that this was going to cover how to work with your kids and create great Christmas ideas for grandparents, right? So,
Right.
That's awesome. Yeah, we look at them as our kids, and I think what always kind of shocked me is that day that you come out of the hospital and they hand you another human being and like, all right, you're out of here. And you're like, what do I do? There's no manual or anything.
Absolutely, bro. And thankful for where we're at. But my son, same guy, he was born at 6 months. He was born 3 months early. So he was in the hospital for the first 3.5 months of his life, and other people, like 4, 5, 6 other people, were taking care of him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we would get in there and eventually, when we were allowed to hold him and they let us start to feed him and start to do some things. But when they handed him to us, I'm like, isn't he yours? Like y'all been doing such a good job. Like, why mess up a good thing? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Well,
let me ask you this, because it's one of the questions that parents, that we kind of surveyed some parents and got some information, because there gets a point where like your kids start to drift away from you, and then as a parent, you realize that valley, or the valley that's opening up, and kids don't. And what were some of the strategies? And I have my ideas of mine, but what were some of the strategies that you used, kind of like to help your kids get through school, to help them navigate, just the going from 8th grade to high school kind of stuff? What was the strategy you used, Javier?
Okay, so one of the things, like I like to think I'm a pretty good parent. I'm not a perfect parent by any means, and I think their mom is excellent as well. But one of the things that one of my mentors shared with me, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get everything right. I'm going to get that right. And what he said is, you raise your kids from 0 to 12, age 0 to 12. At age 12, you let the village take over. He said, you let the village take over because that's when they're going to start challenging you, questioning you, pushing back. And at that time, you let the village. Now, that doesn't mean it's hands off and I'm done being a parent. I still love you. I still help raise you. Obviously, I'm going to still parent you. But you have to let other non-parental, non-judgmental, caring adults start pouring into their lives, seeking out mentors. Your book is amazing when it talks about that, putting other caring adults in their lives. And of course, I curated the village, I'm not just throwing them out there like, figure it out. No, I'm going to put caring adults in their lives that are probably saying the same things as I'm saying. Well, not even probably. I care. We have to have our values aligned. but it's just coming from a different voice, and it resonates differently. And you know me, bro. You know we think we got all the answers,
Right?
And nobody can say it in a way that's more interesting, or more factual than you and I, right?
Okay.
And I know as much as I feel like I have all the answers, and as much as my kids actually like me and love me and think I'm a cool dad, they still don't want to hear it from me. Yeah.
We took it a little bit further, because you, like in the book, when I talk about, you kind of put your village together. We brought the village into our house.
I know.
I knew that there was going to be a point where my son was going to look at me like, there's the old man again. He's telling me that. And I thought, I know that day's coming. And I don't think parents ever prepare for that. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is we knew a really cool guy that wanted to get out of where he was living. We had an extra bedroom. We sat down and we had this conversation. And I said, hey, I want you to move in with us, but there's a little bit of an ulterior motive here. With you moving into our house. I said, my son is going to get to the place where, he doesn't hear my words anymore. And I want you to be my voice. Mm-hmm. Here's how I think on certain things. What are your thoughts on that? And everything really aligned really well with this. And I'm amazed, because that was, oh my gosh, that was, 19 years ago, and they're still best friends. And, one day I told my son and daughter, this was one of the reasons why I brought, him into our house. I didn't want to mention his name, but brought him into our house. And they were like, oh man, and it was kind of amazing, a little bit of amazing that the forethought on this, because there was stuff my son was struggling with that he didn't want to tell me about, but he was willing to tell, let's just call him Jim. He was willing to tell Jim about that. And then Jim came to me and said, how do you want me to handle this situation? I'm like, and so it worked out super well. So I love that. Build that village, build, what you have going on that. So that's one way a parent, you can start, having that conversation with your kids is through other people. Would you agree with that, Javier? Is that
absolutely. Connecting them to non-parental, non-judgmental, caring adults. And there's research, the science shows that's, if a young person is to thrive and flourish in their adolescent years, they have to have adult allies outside of their home. Yeah.
Here's another question that parents get stuck on as well is, how can a parent address a sensitive topic like bullying or academic struggles without making their child feel judged? So I know that growing up in our house, when I would come with those bad grades, all of a sudden it was like, you're not working hard enough. You're not, doing this. You're not. And it just like added all this extra burden on me. And I know there's times when that's going to happen, but let's talk about some ideas or some ways that parents can, address those topics without making their kids feel judged.
So for me, again, not having it all figured out, but trying to figure this thing out, was one of the things that became real important to us in our house was storytelling. Because, and it was trial and error, because my kids would come home from school. I would say the same thing any other parent would say. How was school today? Fine. What'd you learn? Nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I don't know what else to ask. And I don't even know where I got this, so I guess I'll claim it just came from me. I can't give somebody else credit.
Yeah, we'll call this the Sanchez effect.
Right. So what I started asking them early on in their elementary school years, when we'd be driving home from school or after school, I was like, tell me a story. Tell me a story about something that happened today. Yeah. And from there, I heard stories about a test that was hard or a project that they were struggling with, or something that happened in the playground, or something that happened in the cafeteria. Sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was serious. And so, but where your brain fires, it hardwires. What I figured out is, because I was asking every day consistently, tell me a story, they were now preconditioned to every day go and look for a story. They already knew, consciously or subconsciously, I've got to find a story. My dad's going to want to hear a story. So, they're, like I said, their brains rewired and started to go and look for stories, and you find what you're looking for. So it got to the point where when they would come home, I didn't even have to ask. I got a story. Where do you hear this? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So because they were conditioned to look for and find stories to tell.
Yeah.
And that got us through a lot of we bonded over those because again there were some funny ones and some interesting ones, but then we also were able to get through some challenging situations because some of the stories they came home talking about, you're
like, that's tragic. Yeah, but
right.
One of the things, a couple of things I want to bring out in what you said to re-emphasize this for parents is consistency. So you asked your kids every day, tell me a story about your day. It wasn't like on Monday and then 3 weeks later you asked them again.
Right.
Because you lose that. So one thing I want to put out there is consistency. Consistently asking your kids those kind of questions. And number two, you start looking for that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I know both of us have done stand-up comedy, and I've talked with people and like, how did you think about that? Or how did you come up with that funny premise, right? And it's weird when you start working in the comedy business, you start looking at life a whole different way and you start seeing these stories. And it's just whatever field that you're in, because you're consistently looking at something, you can tell the difference. I got a friend that grows corn out in Iowa. And man, he could drive around fields and go, oh, yeah, they don't have enough of this or they don't have enough of that. And he could just identify them. Like, I don't even see the difference in color,
Yeah.
So the thing is, parents, you got to be looking for, inside in turn, looking for your kids and seeing how they're reacting to things. And at first, I'm sure when you started those stories, right, it was just like a real quick, okay. But then in time, it started to grow.
Absolutely.
I want to add my little piece of that, and it's consistently asking questions. Mm-hmm. I always ask questions without any type of judgment on them, without any type of, how was school today? What homework do you have to bring home? How was school today? Did anybody pick on you? But it was just questions and help my kids think about solutions on that. Mm-hmm. We're running a little bit short on time on this one, but let me ask this last question, because this, under establishing open communication, what role does nonverbal communication play in building trust between parents and their teens? So nonverbal communication, when I say nonverbal communication, I mean, what comes to your mind?
What comes to my mind is where our eyes are at when we're talking to our kids. And in the 21st century, most of the time, our eyes are looking at a phone or a screen. And we are more digitally connected than we've ever been, but we're more spiritually, mentally, emotionally, even physically disconnected than we've ever been as well. So I know kids, we give them a hard time about their phones. I always have to remind parents, they didn't invent the phones. They weren't in any of Google, or I don't want to call out any of the big tech companies. They don't sit on their boards. So, they didn't have the money to buy these phones a lot of times. Like, we put these devices in their hands, but we also have to model the behavior that we expect to see from our children. And I know, again, trial and error. When social media hit, and and I'm on the road as a comic and as a speaker and trying to get traction, like I found myself in my phone a lot when my kids were around. And they felt it, and they told their mom, and that was like a shocker to me. Their mom and I aren't together, and she called me one day and she's like, they brought up the fact that when they're with you at your house, you're on your phone a lot. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. And then you know what else I found, bro? A lot of the genuine moments that we could have together as parent and children.
Right.
I was doing it for the photo op. And it was less authentic. It was staged and produced. And I was like, this is gross. This is gross. And so the nonverbal is, for me, is like when my kids are around, it's not the phone is face down. The phone it's on do not disturb.
Love it.
It's do not disturb. You're not. The phone's not going to ring. No notifications. It's gone, because I want them to feel like they are the most important thing going on in that moment. And if your phone is out, if it's face up or face down or whatever the nonverbal communication is, you matter, but something more important could come along at any moment.
Simon Sinek, he does a lot of great stuff out there. If you look up his name, he has a great thing on that about the importance or how it makes the other person feel. And I know that just happened this morning. My wife was telling me a story, and I just picked up my phone, and I didn't even realize, like, she started to talk a little bit slower, and she was like waiting for me to get off, and she's like, "Why did you get on your phone?" I'm like, "I have no idea." And I got to be real cautious on that. For me, going back to the nonverbals, is a little bit like, I think about supporting them with what they're doing. And so if they're playing sports, or if they're, doing a play or something like that, I think a nonverbal is really being there for them in that and supporting them. And I know, when I was a kid, man, I loved theater and I wanted to be in that. And that was just not my mom and dad's thing, but they were super supportive in all that. And so, just being there for them. And if you're not going to be able to be there for them, let them know, man, I can't make this game today. And, I got to work overtime, or I have to, you're important to me and I want to be there, but I know I got to take care of this at work, but I'm going to catch the next game or something like that. And then just being really open and honest about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's our segment right here, talking about establishing open communication. And our next one, we're going to be talking about setting high expectations and encouraging goal setting. But yeah, going back to on this, man, cautious what you do on your phones. Be consistent in asking questions. Be consistent in having your kids tell you a story, and then building that village, right? Anything you want to add, Javier?
No, that was great. And just that, what I found out after we got through their teenage years is that they were listening and paying attention and internalizing more than I thought they were. Yeah, they're going to act like they don't care, they're not listening, but they were actually, and they both shared. Yeah, I heard you, or when this happened when I was a little bit older, I remember what you said. And so don't give up on your kids, because even if it feels like they gave up on you, most likely they haven't.
Hang in there. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Javier. We'll see you in our next segment.
For sure. I love you, bro. Thanks.
With you, man.